As a listing agent, there's questions you don't want to answer, whether you're on what I call the initial phone call to the seller, or the walkthrough, or the final sit down. There's questions we just don't want to answer at all. Even with my experience of over 25 years and the volume that I did, I didn't want people to ask me these questions. I'm going to go through some of these and hopefully prepare you. That way, when somebody asks you these, you'll know what not to say, how to sidestep these questions, how to get them to agree. Can I set that aside? I'm going to start with, what's your brokerage fee? And I asked agents when they're having that first phone call with the seller, and the seller says to him, "Hey, Brian, what's your brokerage fee?" And the agent, I said, kind of role playing, "What do you say?" And he say, "I say the fee, but it's negotiable." I said, "Well, why do you say it's negotiable?" "Well, I know I could be competing." And I asked him, "Why do you say it at all?" "Well, because the seller asked me." I said, "What if you just waited till you demonstrated your value and your service? Go out and show your pricing and your marketing and how much you care and what you're going to do for them, and then say the fee?" Simply asking the seller. I get asked that question a lot. What's the brokerage fee? Here's what my response is, seller. There's an amount that we'll pay out as the buyer's agent, and that's about blank for this market area, this range or that range. It's that. So you're really curious about what my side is. I look at the brokerage fee as kind of project-based. Would it be fair to say, seller, that every listing we charge the same fee for everybody? And so if I could set that aside, that we take a look at it after I see the property, and then I can quote it. Again, I look at every listing like it's project-based. Is that fair enough? In any case, I've never had a seller come back to me and say, "Brian, you got to tell us right now." They understood that it was project-based. Now, this question, what is your fee, is also wrapped in context with a whole conversation. It's not like they just come right and ask it. Generally, unless it's a buying owner or something like that. So you'll see it's in the context of a presentation with somebody or a conversation. They're going to say, "What's your fee?" We want to sidestep that, set that aside, not to be eliminated by that number. Next, if somebody says to you, "Hey, Brian, how's the marketplace?" You're on the phone, you're having a first call, you're at a soccer game with somebody thinking of selling, and they say, "Brian, how's the marketplace?" And of course, the realtor may respond with, we really see it picking up now." And the seller says to themselves, "There's 5 houses for sale in my subdivision. I don't think anything's under contract. It doesn't feel like it's picking up to me. My brother's got his house listed for sale as well, and he can't get that thing sold. It's been on the market for a year." Now, what the agent just did is express their opinion without knowing the other person's opinion first. So when somebody says to you, "How's the market?" don't give your opinion. You know what? Every quadrant's a little bit different based on its price point and style. Overall, we're feeling the marketplace is changing a little bit. It's improving a little bit. However, it really depends on the quadrant. Can I ask you this? Have you noticed houses moving faster or slower, and does it feel like more like a buyer's market to you or a seller's market? You'll notice here we're going to turn the question back on them. Pretty much every time they ask us something, we want to clarify, have them clarify what they mean. When they say, "How's the marketplace?" it might seem, well, they want to know how the market is. But we should not express our opinion until we know what their opinion is. So we want to turn that back to them and say, "Does it seem like a buyer's market in your area or a seller's market? How does it feel as you drive around?" Another question. "Hey, Brian, how long do you think it'll take to sell my property?" We won't hold you to it. So how long will it take to sell? And you're optimistic and say, "Well, I think I can sell houses nowadays in less than 30 days. Houses are flying off the market." Now, the seller didn't want to move for about 4 or 5 months. And what you just told them is they should probably wait, because you were trying to maybe impress the seller with short days. How about this? You ask an agent, "How long will it take to sell my house? How long?" And the agent says, "We're taking about 100 days. And the seller is standing there thinking, or on the phone, or they're thinking, "Well, not in my area. My area is performing better than that. You must not know my area." So again, at all costs, avoid answering any questions during the phone call, during face-to-face. We want to set them aside or re-ask a question of them. And if the seller says to you, what's the best time of year to sell? Well, I've seen the commercials on NAR as a realtor, and generally I kind of pick up any time's a good time to buy. During the worst part of the economy, we're seeing some positive comments in there that now's the time to buy. The economy's picking up. The message is now's the time to buy. And you know what? It's always the time to buy. Just buy right. So when a seller says, what's the best time of the year to sell? We usually get the response, spring. Here's when the best time of the year to sell is when the supply of inventory of buyers exceeds the supply of inventory of sellers. Now, we may not see that in some areas for a year or two. And if that's the case, we could see your house continue to depreciate if we're in a buyer's market. So what's the best time of year to sell? What's the best time to sell? It's when the buyers exceed, that means houses under contract, exceed the amount of properties that are available. So your response to a seller is that story. And to say, I'll prepare that for you because I don't know off the top of my head if the buyer inventory under contract exceeds the pendings or even exceeds the actives. Even a one-to-one marketplace, it's still a good market for, 30 for sale, 30 under contract. We are in a really strong appreciating marketplace at that. So a few more questions here. The seller might say to you, what is your days in the market? Now, you've got to be careful about this because if you sell condos and residential and whatever the case, and the seller says, what's your days in the market? And you say 62. And the seller thinks, that's too long. We don't know what the seller's going to think, which is why we shouldn't answer any questions. We need to know, always be in control. And somebody says, what's your days in the market? Well, it really depends. I do houses in different price points in different areas. And I also sometimes do condos and residential, whatever the case. So property specific for your style, I like to set that aside and get back to you on that because I want to be precise in what I share with you. Next question somebody might say is, well, how many listings do you carry? I used to get that question a lot. I used to carry 25 or 30 listings at a given time. And a seller would say, how many are you carrying? Now, if I say 2, they may judge me as not being busy. Only 2? If I say 25 listings, you're clearly too busy. When I was competing for listings, the other agents would often say, Brian Kilsey doesn't need the listings, or Brian has 25 listings, you'll never get a hold of him. And they didn't know what we were doing and not doing. They were just guessing what happened, what do I do for service-wise. Again, you can see even a high producer doesn't want to answer these questions. What is your fee? How many listings do you carry right now? And then a couple more here, and that is, you've seen my house, Brian. We've walked around the house, and do you think we can get X for it? Do you think we get 400 grand out of it, or whatever it is? And what do you do when a seller asks you that? You're walking around, and they say, well, Brian, you've seen the property. Do you think we can get 400 grand for it? Don't answer the question. And we should set that aside to say, I'd like to finish my analysis, or at least sit down with you and walk you through my paper trail. Because my job is to determine and defend the property's value. I don't want to just wing it, standing here. So if we could complete this. Is that all right? Can we do that? All right. Next one is, these are for newbies. How long have you been in real estate? That's kind of the worst thing you could hear. Because agents are company coaches and go through the mentorship program, and they're in the business for less than a year. And we have to prepare them for the question. I kind of look at like somebody been in the real estate business for less than a year, like a parachute packer. I don't live far from a small airport. And so imagine it's a friend of yours, and they call you up and they say, hey, I just passed my test on packing parachutes. Would you be my first jumper? Well, a lot of us would probably say, no, thank you. And I think new agents are like parachute packers. Our friends know we just got in the business, and they actually might fear telling us that they're moving because we're so green, don't know what we're doing. So the other presentations I've gone through in the video training, will really eliminate somebody saying to you, how long have you been doing this? By the way, if they ask it, it'll be more in a different tone. How long have you been doing this? This is good stuff, what you're sharing with me. Because I've had feedback from agents I work with where they say, they ask the question, and here's what the response is when somebody says, how long have you been doing it? Well, I know this. The longer I've been doing it, the more I learn. And we just set it aside. Last few here is, what should I do to get my house ready? Seller says to you, and you walk in, they got shag carpet and they got horrible bushes out front. The house has 7 different colors paint in the inside. And they say, what should I do to get my house ready? We don't really want to volunteer our opinion on any of that until they tell us what their plans are. So we just turn it back on the seller and say, well, what? I've got to finish my looking around the property. I'd rather not comment on it just yet. Can I ask you what was on your maybe to-do list? And they might rattle off all the things you were going to say, and all you have to do is agree. Because sometimes we point out stuff that a home seller does not want to do, wants to price it in its current condition, and here we are telling them all the stuff that they have to do. What you find is real estate agents oftentimes introduce an objection that eliminates themselves based on a question that they answered. And they're just answering all these questions and giving sometimes the wrong answer. Last few things here. I don't see your listings in the area very much. I don't see your name on signs very much. And that'll be, again, a report that you'll show the sellers out of the MLS. It shows who the listing agency is, who the buyer's agency is, on listing after listing after listing. And you're going to be able to show them about 20 sales on occasion in an area. I've seen it where there were 17 different companies on the last 20 sales. And no agent or agency double dipped out of any of those properties. So when somebody says, I don't see those, well, let me show you how diverse it is. When I show you the report about the sales in the corridor, it'll walk us through the diversity, how many different companies are involved, how few are co-brokered. Run it for yourself. Just run some right now, CMA reports, listing agent, buyer's agent, to see how different it is, because you're going to utilize this in your presentation. Last thing is, we make it a policy, Brian, not to list our home with friends. You understand, don't you? We don't want to ruin our friendship. Well, I know plenty of agents that have lost a friendship with the seller, not because the deal fell through on an inspection or something like that. It's the fact that the house didn't sell. When the house doesn't sell, sometimes a listing agent abandons the seller. I don't know what to say anymore, so I just won't call them. I hope I don't run into them at church or whatever it is. So we make it a practice to not list with friends. You understand, don't you? Well, we feel we can eliminate every one of these stalls or objections if you're using the initial call to seller script and you are really prepared with all the data that we recommend on that script. Pull that data in advance, know their market. This call is not about you. This initial call to seller, I don't care if they're your best friend. This call is not about you and I can take care of this. I got the great marketing program. I sell everything. No, this is about them and demonstrating to them that you really know your stuff. So hopefully you'll find during the first contact or the walkthrough or the sit down with the seller, they haven't asked you a single question, that you're asking everything. And if they do ask a question, you respond back with a question. All right. Thanks for watching.